of the things we're really working with her is the old, metaphor of you got to put the mask on yourself first, because if you don't, if you're in the airplane and it's going down, if you're going to be of any resource to anybody else, you've got to put it on yourself first. And a lot of moms, that's a difficult challenge. It's because they almost feel like they're being, selfish.
Yeah.
But in fact, if anything, they're not, because you can't give what you don't have.
That's right.
So with this client, it's been great. She's been getting counseling and strategies to help her be able to manage her emotions better. And that's an effective strategy through mindfulness, cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance commitment therapy, being, that it's okay to feel the way you do. And that's the first step. It doesn't mean you like it, but having more of an acceptance approach, and mindfulness, learning how to rewire your brain to strengthen your brain. Often some other symptoms, they can't keep track of money, they lose important documents, trouble keeping records in order, can't keep up with things at work, or even keeping up with things at home, household chores, so they feel exhausted, they feel overwhelmed. Again, being able to emotionally self-regulate so they can better manage themselves and their children. Other symptoms that can happen is they're constantly irritable or down.
Right.
They overeat. They can tend to self-medicate. I've seen in the last couple of years more use of medical marijuana because they just want that mental reprieve.
Right.
They want it like they're just in their head all the time. And unfortunately, when you have that THC component in it, it produces more alpha brainwave, the very thing that we don't want. And so it might feel good at the time, but the long term of using it is actually going to make the situation worse. And so, again, we often see patterns of, with difficulty with sleep. We often, what I've seen particularly, my clients that are in their late teens or early 20s, a real reliance on their phone, which we've already discussed. Now more and more, and it can become this vicious cycle. Again, lower self-esteem than we typically see with men, and just more issues with being able to manage stress levels, and which can often lead into other diseases like fibromyalgia. So I think more of the emotional component is where I see and particularly if they're a caregiver.
Right.
And understandably so.
Yeah.
So those are some of the differences, that we see. And it's interesting, like I said, in the last little while, I don't know why. I don't know if the screen time, but we're seeing more and more of this combined presentation where I would have said a decade ago was more the inattentive. In my clinic, we're seeing more of the combined presentation, and I'm not quite sure why that is, but definitely seeing more of that impulsive hyperactivity component.
Yeah, well, that is curious, and I'm sure somebody's doing a study somewhere, and we'll see the results in a decade from now. But I guess you can just create a hypothesis about why you think that is, and perhaps try a few things to see if that is the source of the problem. Next question I have for you, John, is why do you think that a lot of these symptoms go largely unrecognized by medical professionals?
Well, and boy, I'm not here to, excuse my language, poop on the medical field. I think what I'm trying to let people become more aware of is if you've been brought up in the medical model or the pharmaceutical model, there's a certain kind of paradigm or a certain kind of perspective in terms of looking at it. And that going on our model, we talk about the biopsychosocial model. And often they'll do this DSM symptom checklist. They'll do the biology. But I think Like, again, factors like screen time. It's never been asked. A lot of my clients have come in and I've asked them, okay, you've seen them at your GP or your medical doctor, your psychiatrist. Did they ever ask you about the amount of screen time? Have they asked you about the quality of your sleep? It's never been brought forth. The psychosocial issues that are going on. I think there needs to be more pieces in that comprehensive assessment. It can't just be like a clinical interview is critical. Family history, medical history.
Right.
Has anybody else in your family? And I think but there also needs to be all these other pieces that need to be asked that I think are not being asked. And that's, like, again, I can't tell you how many times, and it kind of surprises me, especially in the medical world, where they haven't asked the question, have you ever had a concussion?
Right.
And I think that's sometimes why it there could be some false,
Some false positives.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, in this COVID realm that we're in right now, false positive is a bad thing. It's a bad thing. It causes all kinds of havoc in people's lives. So the next question is, what are some of the consequences of not treating ADHD?
Well, I mean, for example, I've had in my office, because we work with a lot of teenagers, they start to get more involved in risky behavior.
Risky stuff.
Because the brain likes that stimulation. Again, what we've seen, especially in the last few months with COVID, increase because they can't self-control, they can't self-monitor. So, I mean, like I said, I just told you 10 minutes ago, here's a young client, 13 years old, grade 8, now doing 3 to 4 hours of Call of Duty. Now, again, I know a lot of people might think I'm crazy when I'm saying this, but as a sports psychologist, because that's where going back to even your earlier question, I've brought the paradigm of sports psychology into the ADHD world, because we can train it, we can monitor it, we can accurately assess it. But here's an example. You're talking about dangers. Now he's doing 4 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. Now he's not getting that good deep restorative sleep. He goes into class and they were talking about, behavior, being almost like a little bit of the class clown.
Right.
Because it sounds crazy, but he's trying to stimulate. He's trying to keep himself awake. And that could be one of the things. So you can start to get into difficulty with just being able to, like if the teacher's saying things, you're just not,
not engaged, not listening, it's not going in.
And if you're not getting that good deep REM sleep, then your ability to, you could hear it, but you may not be able to memorize it. And so if it gets untreated, what we've often seen in our office too is they get behind. And then that's where, the self-confidence, the self-esteem, the depression, there can be the comparison game. What's wrong with me? How come other kids can do it and I can't? With adult, like again, for teenagers, drinking, smoking, doing drugs, risky social choices. With adults, getting to work on time, completing work by set deadlines, staying organized, getting along with coworkers, accepting criticism calmly. And again, we've had a lot of clients, like I just had a gentleman I was speaking to the other day, where it almost like, if it's, I procrastinate, I put it off, I put it off till almost like I have to do it. And, if you're in that performance business world, that's not,
That's not a good thing. Doing your homework at the final hour when you've had 6 weeks to do it. You know, a lot of people do that and they feel, oh, I perform great under pressure, which I think is a big lie. I think if they had proper preparation and just worked on it a little bit over time and got it done, it'd probably be a better outcome for them. But a lot of people use that excuse that, oh, I work really good under pressure, so I just wait till the last minute to do my homework.
Right. And the other thing, car accidents. Again, and it may sound common sense, but if you can't focus, and you're not seeing things and processing things, you might be more vulnerable. Gambling problems. Again, going back to that.
They want that excitement.
That stimulant. And ADHD brains, because they have more delta theta brainwave and not enough of the good beta, their brain is more vulnerable. And then that's where you can start to get the addiction, you know, component to it, because they need that stimulant. Trouble with the law. That's another issue. And I don't mean to overgeneralize or state this, but you know, we talk about that ability to pay attention and listen. Well, if you're not listening to your significant other, like you're there but you're really not there, then we can start to see relationship problems, and especially if your partner, you know, like we've had a lot of clients where they didn't realize they had ADHD. And so it's like, what the hell's wrong with my partner? You know, like they're ignoring me. They're not paying attention to me, and they're not doing. I've asked them to do things, and they're not doing it. You know, but that's where you can start to get into problems. You know, and when someone receives a diagnosis of ADHD, that's where that's why they're having that difficulty, and it can actually improve, you know, the relationship.
Yeah.